Hello everybody, Gisele Grenier here. So I double checked, my microphone is on. The last video I did, which was the first one after months of being absent, I forgot the battery was dead. Anyways, I'm going to continue experimenting with the vintage effects and the texture sands and all these different things to look at creating texture. Now this particular kit is the Designer Finish Oxidized tin, and what you get in this kit is the Extreme Sheen, the DecoArt Extreme Sheen tin, the DecoArt Americana Texture Sand Medium, and then DecoArt Vintage Effect Wash, the black and the white. Okay, but you know with me, I like to break the rules. With the texture sand medium, I don't like it in the bottle because it's too hard for me to squeeze out. So I much prefer it in these types of containers here. And then in the same respect, and I'm going to work with these pieces here, but you don't have to use these colors here. I mean, take a look at this. If you want to have something with a little bit more oomph, which I actually may do in this piece, the other extreme sheen colors, I mean, there's a whole pile of them, but 24 karat gold, rose gold, and pewter. The pewter is nice because it's not so gray. It's got that shimmer of blue. So that might be something nice to add as well. And then with the Vintage Effect Wash, just because I'm using these products, you can get something similar to these, try the, you could try with the Fluid Acrylics, a Carbon Black, the DecoArt Media Fluid Acrylics, Titanium White, and then maybe just add a little bit of matte medium to it to further thin it down if need be. It's just all about experimenting. Don't think about the end process. Think about just the experimenting as you go along. And you can learn all these different things, that you can do with the product. So an old book of backgrounds book that I did broke. The actual binding broke, so I figured I'm going to start using these for some pieces because it'll save me some time. So this particular piece, I was experimenting with the actual texture paste, and I've got crackle paste here, and what's this one? Oh, that's a crackle paste as well, colored, and it's just on plain paper with just, I don't know, whatever's on it. So I'm going to experiment with this one because this here is raw paper. There isn't any gesso on here. So what I want to do first is I want to apply a thin coat of gesso over the entire piece and then work the process of the pieces. So I'm going to be using the DecoArt Chalky Gesso because I love the finish of this being really, really velvety. It's really soft. So I'm going to use that over here. Oh, but I have it in a smaller tube because it's easier to manage. Now, as I go through this gesso here, if you listen, okay, it's nice and creamy. If I wanted to use something thicker, I would go with the DecoArt Media Gesso in the container. And this one, I have 3 of these. One as is, one that I've opened up the cap and I've stirred it over a couple days to really thicken up. Then I have another one which I've added distilled water to make it even thinner than the Chalky Gesso. So I've got different types. The one that I've thinned down I can get away with not doing now because I've got the Chalky Gesso, but having it in a container, it just makes it consistent every single time. Out of breath. All right, so just applying a thin coat. All I'm doing is I'm creating a barrier. I'm just putting that barrier down. I want to prime the paper. As if you've got paper that's raw paper and you're putting a lot of fluid product on it, it's going to start to warp. For this particular case, it's going to warp regardless because it's already an existing piece of artwork on here. And there's what's on the back. Oh, a fiber girl. One of my anonymous women pieces. Whoops. All right, so just really get that in there. Now picture this piece. So thinking, although the stenciled elements really aren't consistent with, let's say, industrial or steampunk, I'm going to turn this into an industrial piece. because that's my thing. I don't know what I'm going to do when we move to the Bahamas, because the industrial look really doesn't work down there. But I love that. So I may just, we're experimenting now. Our furniture and everything is quite industrial looking. And I'm creating Caribbean accents, like tropical Caribbean decor pieces. So we'll see. We'll see. I don't know if that's going to work. All right, so I've got that. Now I'm going to hit this with the heat gun quite quickly. And as I go through, if I pull out more supplies or don't use them, you'll see throughout the video. Because I let the piece guide me as to creating it. I don't set out with an intention, I'm going to do this and I'm only going to use these products. I let the piece kind of take on its own life form, and not to make it sound all woo-woo. But as I start working with that, I'll go, oh, this will look really cool with this, and oh, this will look really cool with that. So what you're going to do is, if you're recycling a piece, so you're going to do the same type of thing. Now here, this is quite thick with paint, or with the gesso. So I'm just going to spread that out a little bit. Around the edges. Now what you want to do is, ideally you want to let this dry naturally, especially with gesso. When you're using it to actually prime a piece, you don't want to speed up the drying time when it's being used as a primer. If it's just being used as just texture and whatever, then fine, you can just go ahead. But when it's being used as a primer, now you got to let it dry naturally. Just getting rid of all the lumps and bumps. Alright, gonna put that into thing. Then you just dry it one more time. You can tell when it's drying, so if I can find no, I can't. So you find a shiny spot. When you put a heat gun or a hair blower on it, the shine will disappear. Now when you're using a heat gun, you got to make sure that it's not too hot, otherwise you're going to burn the paper and burn the acrylics. So I always put my hand there, because if my hand can take the heat, then it's fine. A hair blower right now, would just blow everything out of the way. Alright, so now let's follow the instructions. So you base coat the surface with tin using a sponge. Okay, that's interesting. Base coat surface with tin using a sponge or a palette knife. Well, I'm not going to be using a palette knife over this thing or a sponge. I'm just going to use a brush. Sorry. I'm going to use all the colors though. Oops, there's still the wrapper on this. I'm going to use all the colors. All right, sorry about that. I just had to take the cap off there. So I'm going to, so what they're saying about applying it with a palette knife, just think that if you were doing that with a palette knife, you'd be doing that over the whole piece. I guess to get all the lines on there might be interesting. Nah, not a fan of that. But let's try it. So now I'm going with the blue. So I'm going to be using the tin, the pewter, the rose gold, and the 24 karat gold. And I don't think I'm going to continue on with that. This is not the effect I'm going for, but. Not sure. I'm going to get another one. See, there's another one. The Salt Wash Farmhouse. Yeah, this one says with a brush. So there's a reason why they said with this one here to apply it with a sponge or palette knife. I don't understand why you can't apply it with a brush, but I'm going to anyways, because that, to me, you know what? Not that I'm lazy, that's too much work. That's too much work. Because I want everything to be, but you know what, now think about it. it's the brush strokes. So let's try. You know what? Yeah. Okay, I'm thinking now I know why. I'm thinking now I know why. Because you've got all those brush strokes. Oh, the rose gold with the blue is gorgeous. I'm just going to pick up the paint. I'm not even going to bother. I'm not even going to bother cleaning the palette knife. So make sure you don't use any expensive palette knives because this is quite rough. And I picked colors that all worked well together. So like for the extreme sheen, I wouldn't use something, let's say I wouldn't use an orange because an orange and a blue won't work together. I kind of use blues, then into reds, and then to the golds. I'm going to put a bit of gold here. And let's get some gray in here. Or the tin, I should say. Let's get some blue down here. Remember, this is a base coat. A lot of this stuff is going to be hidden. Let's get some blue over here. So the tin, I think, is my least favorite. But again, you don't have to use the colors. The colors are chosen for an effect, but use whatever you want. I don't want to throw the paint away, so I'm just going to use whatever I've got left over. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in and I'm just going to get rid of all the heavy excess. Because we have to put a couple more layers of color. And we have to put the texture sand. I want some more gold there. So over something that's already stenciled is a little bit more difficult to work with. Wonder what that would have looked like with a sponge. But that's the whole thing, the what ifs, and this is where you try it. Now I have done another project with this, and it was quite interesting. So anytime you're using a product for the first time, it's all about seeing what you can do, how far you can push the product. It's not about creating a perfect piece right up front. It's about pushing the product to see how far you can take it. So that's that. Okay, so what I want to do now, I'm going to put that aside somewhere. And I'm going to take a plain piece of cardstock. And now what I'm going to do is just do, not this one, the tin. Now I'm just going to do a plain sample piece. What happened there? What happened there? Oh, there's some separation in there. I'm going to have to check that. What I want to do now is just basically create a sample piece. Just going to distribute that around. Following the exact instructions. And then So I'll work a sample piece based on the instructions, and then I've got the other piece with the stuff that's already stenciled. So I'm liking that. Oh, there you go, right like that, just like that. So I'll leave that. So now I'm going to leave these to dry. Now, following the instructions, the next step is to mix tin with the texture sand medium, which I'm going to use this one, or maybe I'll take the top off and squeeze it because it's too hard on my hands. Mix those two together. So 4 parts tin, 1 part texture sand medium. Apply randomly. Let it dry. Then lightly brush on the black. Mix 4:1 with water over the surface. Let dry. Then repeat with the white. When dry, apply varnish. Okay, well, we'll see what happens. All right, so I will come back in a bit. I'm going to put these away because I don't need them anymore. I'm going to come back in a bit, and we will go on to play with the sand medium. Okay, so now we're ready to start mixing some of this stuff up. So I'm going to put, I'm going to continue on with mixing some of the other colors. I decided not to put them away because I want to get the full, I want to see what all the different things that can be done. Okay, now I'm going to, let's see how hard this one is. Oh my god. Oh, what's the ratio? I think it's 4:1. Oops, too much. I put too much there. Oh well. Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's see what we get with this one here. Okay. And you just mix that all up. Then I'll apply it with a brush. So it actually mixes quite nice. I have a little pot that I have to upcycle. I'm thinking this might be a nice one to use. All right, so let's start with this one first. So the instructions say apply randomly and sparingly. Okay. And let's go with the blue. And let's go with the rose gold. So I'm thinking for this book of backgrounds may not have been the best choice for this, but we'll see. Right now I just want to test out the colors and then the effect. I'm going to overlap. I'm going to overlap some color. Let's put some gold there. Put some blue there. Because I'm also going to then do the proper just on that. There's not a lot of projects, or not a lot of instruction on this particular technique from DecoArt, but I have done this, you know, using overlapping items like quite like between texture medium. Oh, my mouth was rented. Using texture medium, I've done quite a lot of techniques using this. Not using this specific order, I don't know if any of that made sense whatsoever. Okay, so let's see. Let's see what we get with that. Okay, I'm going to put that aside to dry. Oh, let me just finish this side. Okay, now I need to get tin again. I'm going to put that over here. And then I'll take this one. Okay, so just applying it randomly. I love that effect there. This is too much. But the beauty is that you can scrape it off and then do it again. So it's just pad, 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 and then put it on. I could have done that. I'm going to use up the rest of this stuff. Yeah, I like it better with the palette knife for the texture. With the brush, it just seems to kind of, it just kind of smears it, which is funny because in the beginning I said I didn't like the idea of using a palette knife. Because we're going to be painting over this anyways. So this is just to create that, you know, that additional texture. But I'm trying to think now if I would using a steampunk stencil, would that have worked better? Who knows? Okay, we'll see what that gives us. I'm not a fan of that rose gold there. Let me just put some regular gold. Yeah, not a fan of, and I also found that we needed more closer to a 1-to-1 with the texture, the sand. That's better. Whoopsie, I'm getting sloppy. Just breaking up the solid color. I know it looks like crap right now, but remember, we're building it up. So I'm going to be honest with you. I prefer the pewter over the tin. The color, the blue, I prefer that. But I love this effect right here. Over the actual stenciled pieces, not so much. Not so much. Okay, let's see now. We'll let that dry. Put that over here. I'm not going to touch this one because I'm doing this as per. And then the next step after this, let's see. Brush on black, mixed with 4-to-1 to water, let dry, then repeat with the white. So we'll see what happens. Okay, so it's all dry now, just to kind of give you an idea of. So it is quite messy, but now the next step is to tone everything back down with a very transparent layer of the black, the Vintage Effect black. So I'm going to use a soft brush that will hold a lot of water. So watercolor brush works well for this. And I'm going to try it this way. What if I just spray this first? Okay. And what I like about these types of brushes that they can get right into little nooks and crannies because the bristles are really long. Another brush that would have done well for this is a Hake brush, but they're so packed in a box. So with this here, because the Vintage Effect paint is already translucent, you can really control by the opacity by adding additional layers. So I really want to get that in there. The bird would, I think, would have been nice if I, even to go over with a wax metallic, a gold. Let's get that in there. Now this part here, we can use a heat gun or a hair dryer to speed up drying time. Now what would be really neat, and not this particular project, but if you did this maybe with some different colors where there was more contrast, you could use the hair blower to blow the pieces around. Just getting some parts here, just want to really emphasize that darkness. Okay, let's see what we can get here. Now you can let this stuff dry naturally, but I'm going to use the heat gun just to see what happens. Ooh, I like those lines. I like that. I love that look. So that's what I would mean about moving this stuff around. Bring that down. Create some really interesting shapes. And if you find that when you do this that it's just too translucent, you add another layer. You just add and add. It's easier to keep adding versus adding too much, because then you have to remove it. And what this is doing is knocking back the metallic and just neutralizing everything. So this is where you think of what happens when you use pure black on something. It just kind of dulls it down. I love that. This thing right here. Loving that. And this style isn't for everybody. It's just you just experiment. That's all it's about. And right now, because I've been away from this for so long, I'm going to use this opportunity to, just to kind of document me getting back into it. And when I've been away from art for quite a while, it is hard to get back into it because you're in a different zone. I'm loving these lines. Tilting that so they kind of bloom out a little bit. Always keeping, whether you use a heat gun or your hair dryer, always keep it moving. Okay. I'm just going to blot this part up here. Now normally I would have just let that dry by itself. I want to add another layer just so we can see what happens. Alright, so not quite enough. So I'm going to add another layer. I now know what I would do different with this. Oh, you know what? Let's put that as, no, that's, I'm going to work on this little piece here, but let's do this one. Then I'll let it, as it dries, and I'll work on the other one. All right, so let's do another layer. And let's see. And this is the beauty, like when you're working with something that you've never touched before, like a new product, and it's all about seeing what it can do. Follow the instructions first, and then kind of push the product into different directions. Like here, I would have probably liked to have used a bit more of the sand. The other thing to experiment with is the black sprays, the misters. Okay, I'm liking this a little bit better. I really want to grab that. Okay, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to put that aside now. And then I'm going to grab this one and repeat the same thing. See how it grabs the the texture sand grabs the paint. Wow, look at that. That looks more metal. That looks more like metal. Okay, so I'm going to try to get my brush in there. Bring that to the corner where you want that dark. Look at that. That looks really cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to dry the other pieces and then come back. And then the next layer is to add some watered down white. All right, so what we end up with is this. Now, what I think I'm not liking is basically the number and the question mark. So if I take out that and I look at this here, I love that look. I absolutely love it. It looks like old, worn out metal. I absolutely love it. Not a fan of this, but this was an experiment in Book of Background, so I have to ignore this part. But I'm liking all this here, and so that is the. Basically just as is without any stenciling. And I'm looking here, can you see a skull or an alien? The eyes and then the nose and then the mouth. I keep thinking, you know, that would make a really cool, and I'm going to write it down. I have a stencil. It's an Andy Skinner stencil of, I think it's Andy Skinner, of I think it's a sugar skull. I think it's a sugar skull. Hang on. Oh. This one, Day of the Dead. That would make for a really, really cool project like that. Oh, yeah. I think I'm going to do that. Sorry, so the next step, and I'm afraid of doing this because I don't know what's going to happen, is taking white. And it says basically on the instructions to repeat step with white. So I'm thinking, okay, well, it has to be transparent as well. I don't know. All right. I don't know how that's going to. I don't know what that's going to do. Okay. Because it's transparent, and again, we're going to just enjoy the process no matter how scary it is. It's just art. And you know, when you're trying to figure out what a product does, and it's just, this is where you start saying, okay, what if I dry brush this instead? What if I had added a layer of matte medium on this, then applied the paint? What if I applied the paint pure? It's supposed to be 4:1, which is really, really, really watery. Okay, well, we'll see what happens with that. Okay, so I'm going to put that aside. Then I'll do the same thing here. This one, I like the look the way it was. And again, doing these, because you can buy these paints all separate. If you want to stop. You don't have to complete the whole process. Okay, let's see what that's going to look like. Okay, what a difference in the look. Huge, huge difference. Look at that. So what I did is I went on my phone and I did a search of what does oxidized tin look like. And I wonder if I can get to this one. So, whoopsie. So that's closer to this. It's a little bit bluer, but it's that effect here. So it's interesting. The let's get out of here. This one, look at that. So yeah, so it's interesting. It's I never visualized how you could replicate something that's naturally occurring into something like this. So now, on the instructions said to varnish it. So this is going to be a pop quiz for you guys. I'm just going to get a baby wipe. So I'm not going to do it, but if you had to varnish this, would you use a, let's see, what have I got? I'm looking at my shelf. Would you use a matte, satin, or gloss varnish on this? Think of, we're trying to, we're creating the look of oxidized tin. So would you use a matte, satin, or gloss varnish? So comment, add your answer in the comments below, and I'm curious to what you have to say. So what could you use these things for? Like, unfortunately, I did on the back of a book of backgrounds, but I'm looking at this and I would love to cut these out to create, especially this here, and even this one here, artist trading cards or whatever, but not a fan of the numbers. And it's what it is. It's not so much the stenciling, it's the number and the question mark. It just doesn't make sense. But beyond that, I'm loving this effect right here, especially this right here. I'm loving this here. Loving that. And this one here, this is really, really cool. You can tell which way I was moving the heat gun because there's lines this way. So note to self, circular, not like this. All right, so again, what varnish should we use for this? And can you think of some ideas of what you could do? Like, let's say if I gave you this, what could you create with it? To give me some ideas for an upcoming project. Alrighty, so hope you enjoyed this. Give me a thumbs up if you found it entertaining and informative. And yeah, throw in your comments below. And until I see you in the next video, stay inspired.